What if I told you that one of the most dangerous things you can do for your blood pressure after age 70 is exercise more? I know that sounds insane. Every doctor, every magazine, every well-meaning family member has told you to get moving. They're not entirely wrong, but here's what nobody is telling you. A 2022 study published in the European Heart Journal followed over 11,000 adults above the age of 65 and found that those who engaged in moderate to vigorous exercise within 3 hours of sleep actually experienced a spike in nighttime systolic blood pressure, averaging 14 points higher than those who were sedentary during that same window. 14 points. That's the difference between stage 1 hypertension and a medical emergency at 3 in the morning when nobody is watching. I've spent over 2 decades researching circadian biology and cardiovascular health in aging populations. And the single most overlooked factor in blood pressure management for people over 70 is not what you do during the day. It's what you do in the 5 minutes before you close your eyes at night. Tonight, I'm going to walk you through a specific 5-minute night routine, 5 steps, each one backed by peer-reviewed research, that can begin lowering your blood pressure naturally within the first week. And by the end, I'm going to reveal the one step that a team of Japanese cardiologists called the closest thing to a blood pressure medication without a prescription. That's a direct quote. We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what's actually happening inside your body at night, because this is where everything falls apart for most people over 70, and almost nobody explains it clearly. Your blood pressure is not a fixed number, it's a rhythm. Over the course of 24 hours, your blood pressure follows what's called a circadian blood pressure pattern. A healthy individual blood pressure drops by 10 to 20% during sleep. This is called nocturnal dipping. Your body does this on purpose. During deep sleep, your sympathetic nervous system, the one responsible for fight or flight, dials down. Your blood vessels relax, your heart rate slows, your kidneys adjust sodium filtration. Everything conspires to give your cardiovascular system a period of genuine rest. Here's the problem. After the age of 65, and especially after 70, a significant percentage of people lose this dip. They become what cardiologists call non-dippers. Their blood pressure stays elevated all night long. Some even become reverse dippers. Their blood pressure actually rises during sleep. A study in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that non-dippers have a 57% higher risk of cardiovascular events than dippers. 57%. That's not a marginal increase. That's a different category of risk entirely. So the question isn't just, what's your blood pressure at the doctor's office at 2 in the afternoon? The real question is, what's your blood pressure doing at 2 in the morning? And the answer, for most people over 70, is something they've never measured and never thought about. Now, why does nocturnal dipping disappear with age? Several reasons are at play, and I want to go through each one. Because every step in the routine, I'm about to give you targets at least one of these mechanisms directly. First, arterial stiffness. As you age, the walls of your arteries lose elasticity. The collagen to elastin ratio shifts. Elastin, the protein that gives your arteries their springiness, their ability to stretch when a pulse of blood rushes through, degrades and is replaced by stiffer collagen fibers. Calcium deposits form in the arterial walls, a process called vascular calcification. The result is that your arteries become more like rigid pipes and less like flexible tubes. This means the signal your body sends to relax blood vessels at night gets muted. The vessels simply can't comply the way they used to. The smooth muscle cells are still there, still receiving the signal, but the structural matrix around them won't yield. Second, sympathetic nervous system overactivation. Chronic stress, poor sleep architecture, chronic pain, social isolation, even loneliness. All of these keep your sympathetic nervous system in a heightened state. Cortisol and norepinephrine remain elevated well into the evening hours. Your adrenal glands don't get the memo that it's time to stand down. And here's something that most people don't realize. The sympathetic nervous system doesn't just raise blood pressure through vasoconstriction. It also acts directly on the kidneys, causing them to retain sodium and water. So you get a double effect: tighter vessels and more fluid pushing against those tighter walls. Your body can't transition into the parasympathetic mode. It needs for that blood pressure dip. Third, sodium sensitivity increases dramatically with age. This is well established in the nephrology literature. Your kidneys become less efficient at excreting sodium overnight. The glomerular filtration rate, the speed at which your kidneys filter blood, declines by roughly 1% per year after the age of 40. By the time you're 70, you may have lost 30% of your kidney filtration capacity. The sodium stays in your blood longer. It pulls water into your blood vessels through osmosis, and vessel pressure stays high. This is why some people see their blood pressure spike after a salty dinner and don't understand why their morning reading is so high. The sodium is still there. Their kidneys couldn't clear it overnight. Fourth, and this is one most people miss entirely, melatonin production declines. Melatonin isn't just a sleep hormone. It's a direct vasodilator. It acts on mTON and mTTWO melatonin receptors in your blood vessel walls, causing them to relax. It also acts as an antioxidant within the vascular endothelium, protecting the cells that line your blood vessels from oxidative damage that contributes to stiffness. By the time you're 70, your pineal gland may be producing less than half the melatonin it produced at 40. Some studies suggest the decline is even more dramatic. Your vessels literally don't receive the chemical signal to open up at night. And without that signal, the nocturnal dip doesn't happen. There's a fifth factor I want to mention because it connects to something we'll discuss later. Nitric oxide bioavailability decreases with age. Nitric oxide is the master vasodilator. It's produced by endothelial cells, the cells lining your blood vessels. And it signals the smooth muscle beneath them to relax. But the enzyme that produces nitric oxide, endothelial nitric oxide synthase, becomes less active with age. At the same time, oxidative stress increases and reactive oxygen species scavenge whatever nitric oxide is produced, breaking it down before it can do its job. The result is a blood vessel that's structurally stiffer, chemically deprived of relaxation signals, and increasingly unable to regulate its own pressure. Everything I'm about to share with you targets one or more of these 5 mechanisms. Not vaguely, not with wishful thinking, directly, physiologically, measurably. Let's begin. Step 1. The magnesium foot soak. This is not a luxury. This is not self-care in the way a scented candle is self-care. This is pharmacology delivered through your skin. At approximately 5 minutes before your intended sleep time, and I'll explain why timing matters so precisely. In a moment, you're going to soak your feet in warm water with magnesium sulfate, which you know as Epsom salt. Here's what's happening physiologically. Magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. That term should sound familiar because it's the exact mechanism of action of drugs like amlodipine and nifedipine, 2 of the most commonly prescribed blood pressure medications on the planet. Calcium ions cause smooth muscle in your arterial walls to contract. They flow through voltage-gated calcium channels in the smooth muscle cell membrane, trigger an intracellular cascade, and the muscle fiber shortens. The vessel narrows. Pressure rises. Magnesium competes with calcium for those binding sites. When magnesium wins, the muscle relaxes. The vessel dilates. Pressure drops. This isn't theory. This is basic vascular physiology. A meta-analysis published in Hypertension in 2016 reviewed 34 randomized controlled trials involving over 2,000 participants and found that magnesium supplementation reduced systolic blood pressure by an average of 2 points and diastolic by 1.78 points. That may sound modest, but those studies used oral supplementation, which has notoriously poor bioavailability. Your gut absorbs maybe 30 to 40% of the magnesium you swallow, and even less if you're taking proton pump inhibitors, which many people over 70 are. Transdermal absorption, through the skin, bypasses the gut entirely, and the skin on the soles of your feet has a high density of sweat glands and pores, making it one of the most efficient absorption sites on your body. A pilot study from the University of Birmingham found that participants who bathed in Epsom salt solution showed statistically significant increases in blood magnesium levels after just 7 consecutive days. The researchers noted that the increase was most pronounced in participants who had been magnesium deficient. At baseline, and according to the National Institutes of Health, up to 68% of American adults over 70 don't meet the recommended dietary allowance for magnesium. So the odds are good that this applies to you. But there's a second mechanism at work here that has nothing to do with magnesium: the warm water itself. When you soak your feet in water between 100 and 104 degrees Fahrenheit, you trigger peripheral vasodilation. Blood rushes to your extremities, your skin temperature rises, and as a direct consequence, your core body temperature begins to drop as heat dissipates through your skin surface. This drop in core body temperature is one of the most powerful signals your hypothalamus uses to initiate sleep. Your body interprets falling core temperature as it's time to sleep. The suprachiasmatic nucleus responds by amplifying melatonin release from the pineal gland. And we've already discussed what melatonin does to your blood vessels. So in one step, you're blocking calcium channels in your arteries, you're triggering peripheral vasodilation, you're correcting a likely magnesium deficiency, and you're initiating the thermoregulatory cascade that leads to enhanced melatonin production. 4 mechanisms: 1 basin of warm water and 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt, 5 to 8 minutes of soaking. Now, I promised I'd come back to timing, and I want to address it here, because it's critical. Why 5 minutes before bed and not 30 minutes or an hour? Because you want the vasodilatory effect and the core temperature drop to coincide precisely with the moment you're lying down and transitioning into sleep. If you do this an hour before bed, your core temperature may begin to rise again before you actually fall asleep, and you've lost the window. Your body thermoregulates constantly, and it will start working to bring your temperature back up. A study from the Journal of Physiological Anthropology confirmed that the optimal sleep onset effect of a warm foot bath occurred when subjects went to bed within 10 minutes of the soak. Not 30, not 60, 10. The window is narrow, so respect it. Step 2. Slow nasal breathing with extended exhale. I know what some of you are thinking. Breathing exercises, here we go, another YouTube video telling me to breathe. But I need you to set that skepticism aside for 5 minutes, because the data on this is not ambiguous. It's not soft. It's overwhelming. And it's coming from some of the most rigorous cardiovascular research institutions in the world. In 2019, researchers at the University of Colorado Boulder conducted a study on a technique called inspiratory muscle strength training. Essentially, slow, resisted breathing performed for 5 minutes a day. After 6 weeks, participants' systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of 9 points. 9. That is comparable to the effect of a first-line antihypertensive medication. The study was published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. This was not fringe research. This was a prospective, randomized, sham-controlled trial with rigorous methodology. A subsequent study from the same group, published in 2022, found that the effects persisted for 6 weeks after participants stopped the breathing exercises. The blood pressure reduction didn't vanish immediately. The vascular changes had a residual effect, suggesting actual structural and functional improvement in the blood vessels, not just a temporary relaxation response. Here's what's happening in your body when you breathe slowly through your nose with a longer exhale than inhale. Your vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body, running from your brainstem through your neck, past your heart, and down to your abdomen, is activated on every exhale. Specifically, during exhalation, intrathoracic pressure changes stimulate baroreceptors in the aortic arch and carotid sinus. which send afferent signals through the vagus nerve to the nucleus tractus solitarius in the brainstem. The brainstem responds by increasing parasympathetic outflow. Your heart rate slows, your blood vessels dilate, cortisol and norepinephrine production decreases, your baroreceptors, the pressure sensors in your carotid arteries, and aortic arch recalibrate to a lower set point. That last part is critically important, and I want to make sure you understand it. Baroreceptor sensitivity declines with age. These tiny stretch receptors in your major arteries are supposed to detect when blood pressure is too high and trigger a corrective response, slow the heart, dilate the vessels, bring the pressure down. But over decades, they become desensitized. They start to accept higher and higher pressures as normal. Your body essentially forgets what healthy blood pressure feels like and starts defending a higher number as its new baseline. This is called baroreceptor resetting, and it's one of the primary reasons hypertension becomes self-perpetuating in older adults. Slow breathing retrains those sensors. It's not a metaphor. It's a measurable physiological resetting that has been documented on ambulatory blood pressure monitors. Here's the specific protocol. Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold gently for 1 second. Breathe out through your nose for 6 seconds. That's an 11-second cycle. At this pace, you'll complete approximately 5 to 6 cycles per minute, which puts you right in the range. That research has identified as optimal for vagal stimulation and baroreceptor retraining, typically 4.5 to 6.5 breaths per minute. You need approximately 2 minutes of this within the routine, roughly 11 cycles. Do this while your feet are still warm from the soak, while you're lying in bed with the lights off. The darkness matters because ambient light suppresses melatonin production through the intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. In your eyes, even dim light. The combination of falling core temperature, peripheral vasodilation, darkness, and vagal activation creates a compounding effect that is substantially greater than any one of these interventions alone. And I want to foreshadow something here. Step 4 involves a specific food, something you probably already have in your kitchen or can get at any grocery store, that amplifies the effect of this breathing technique by making your blood vessels more responsive to the nitric oxide that your body produces during parasympathetic activation. When we get there, I think you'll be genuinely surprised by how simple it is and how powerful the research behind it has become. Step 3. Legs up. The wall. This is simple. It takes 60 seconds, and the hemodynamic effect is immediate and measurable with a standard blood pressure cuff. Before you begin your breathing, or immediately after your foot soak, lie on your back in bed and rest your legs vertically against the wall or your headboard. Your body should form an approximate L shape. If you can't get your legs fully vertical due to flexibility limitations, even a 45-degree angle will produce a meaningful effect. The key is that your feet are above your heart. What's happening? Gravity is pulling venous blood from your lower extremities back toward your heart. This increases venous return, the volume of blood flowing back to the right atrium. Increased venous return increases what's called preload, which increases stroke volume, the amount of blood your heart pumps per beat through the Frank Starling mechanism. When stroke volume increases, your heart doesn't need to beat as fast or as forcefully to maintain adequate cardiac output. Heart rate drops. The force exerted on arterial walls per beat decreases. Blood pressure drops. But there's a second effect that's specific to people over 70, and that nobody talks about in these general wellness videos. Many older adults have some degree of peripheral edema, fluid pooling in their feet, ankles, and lower legs throughout the day. This is caused by venous insufficiency, reduced lymphatic drainage, prolonged sitting, and the effects of gravity acting on aging vasculature. This excess interstitial fluid contributes to elevated blood volume, which directly increases blood pressure. It also compresses small blood vessels in the lower extremities, increasing peripheral resistance. By elevating your legs for even 60 to 90 seconds before sleep, you redistribute that fluid. Centrally, your lymphatic system, which has been fighting gravity all day, can now drain more efficiently. Your kidneys receive increased blood flow and can process the excess fluid more effectively overnight. You wake up with less swelling, less total blood volume, and your blood pressure is lower throughout. The following morning, a study in the Journal of Bodywork and Movement Therapies found that the legs up the wall position reduced both systolic and diastolic blood pressure significantly within 2 minutes, with the greatest magnitude of effect in participants over 60. A separate study in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine found that this position also reduced heart rate variability markers associated with sympathetic overactivation, meaning it calmed the fight-or-flight system. 1 minute. That's all this step requires. Legs up. Let gravity do the work your lymphatic system has been struggling to do all day. Step 4. This is the one I've been hinting at. This is the kitchen secret. 2 tablespoons of raw, unfiltered beet juice mixed with 4 ounces of tart cherry juice, consumed 30 minutes before you begin your foot soak. Not during, not after, 30 minutes before. The timing is everything, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Let me start with the beet juice. Because the science on this has exploded in the last decade, and it represents one of the most significant discoveries in nutritional cardiology. Beets are one of the richest dietary sources of inorganic nitrate. When you drink beet juice, the nitrate enters your bloodstream and is transported to your salivary glands, which concentrate it in your saliva. When you swallow that saliva, bacteria on the back of your tongue, yes, specific facultative anaerobic bacteria, that live in the crypts of your posterior tongue, convert that nitrate into nitrite through a process called the enterosalivary nitrate-nitrite pathway. The nitrite enters your bloodstream through your stomach and small intestine and is further converted into nitric oxide through several enzymatic and non-enzymatic pathways, particularly in acidic environments and in tissues with low oxygen tension. Nitric oxide is the single most potent vasodilator your body produces. It was named Molecule of the Year by Science magazine in 1992, and the researchers who discovered its role in vascular signaling won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1998. Nitric oxide signals the smooth muscle in your arterial walls to relax through a cyclic GMP-mediated pathway. Vessels open, resistance drops, pressure falls. A landmark study published in Hypertension in 2015 gave participants approximately 250 milliliters, a little more than a cup, of beet juice daily. Within 4 weeks, systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of 8 points. 8 points from juice. The effect was detectable within 3 hours of consumption, peaked at 3 to 6 hours post-consumption, and persisted for up to 24 hours after a single dose. That peak timing of 3 to 6 hours is exactly why I'm telling you to drink it 30 minutes before your foot soak. By the time you're lying down and doing your breathing exercises approximately 40 minutes later, your nitric oxide levels are climbing toward their peak. Now, here's why I'm combining it with tart cherry juice, and this is where the synergy becomes remarkable. Tart cherries, specifically Montmorency tart cherries, are one of the few significant dietary sources of exogenous melatonin. Remember what I explained earlier. Melatonin production declines with age. Melatonin is a direct vasodilator acting on specific receptors in your blood vessel walls. It also serves as a powerful antioxidant within the vascular endothelium, scavenging the reactive oxygen species that would otherwise destroy your nitric oxide before it can work. A study from Louisiana State University found that adults who consumed tart cherry juice twice daily for 2 weeks experienced an increase in sleep duration, averaging 84 minutes, and a measurable reduction in systolic blood pressure. A separate study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition confirmed that tart cherry juice consumption raised measurable melatonin levels in the blood. But there's a third mechanism happening with the tart cherry juice that connects directly back to step 2, the breathing. Tart cherries contain exceptionally high concentrations of anthocyanins, which are potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds. They're the pigments that give the cherries their deep red color. Chronic vascular inflammation, driven by interleukin-6, C-reactive protein, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, reduces the bioavailability of nitric oxide. Inflammatory cytokines upregulate the production of superoxide anions, which chemically react with nitric oxide and destroy it. Your vessels become less responsive to the relaxation signal. By reducing systemic inflammation, the anthocyanins in tart cherry juice make your blood vessels more receptive to the nitric oxide you're generating from the beet juice. The two compounds are genuinely synergistic. Each one makes the other more effective. And there's a connection to the breathing as well. When you activate your parasympathetic nervous system through slow breathing, your body produces nitric oxide endogenously. Your own endothelial cells ramp up production. The anti-inflammatory effect of the tart cherry juice means that this endogenous nitric oxide is also better preserved, less likely to be scavenged by oxidative stress. So the breathing becomes more effective because the cherry juice has prepared the vascular environment. The recipe is simple: 2 tablespoons of beet juice, 4 ounces of tart cherry juice, mix them in a glass, drink it 30 minutes before you start the rest of your routine. You can buy both at most grocery stores. The beet juice should be raw, not from concentrate. Look for cold-pressed if possible. The tart cherry juice should be 100% juice, no added sugar. This matters critically because sugar triggers an insulin response that temporarily raises blood pressure through sympathetic activation and sodium retention, which would undermine the entire point of the drink. If the taste is too strong for you, you can dilute it with 2 ounces of water. Do not add sweetener. Step 5. And this is the one that the Japanese cardiologists called the closest thing to a blood pressure medication without a prescription. Lower the temperature of your bedroom to between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit before you sleep. This sounds almost too simple to matter. It's not. The research behind this is extraordinary, and it ties together every other step in this routine. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine tracked over 200 adults and found that sleeping in a cooler room, specifically below 68 degrees, was associated with significantly lower nighttime blood pressure, improved sleep architecture, and increased time spent in deep slow-wave sleep. Deep sleep is where your body does its most aggressive blood pressure regulation. It's when growth hormone is released, stimulating vascular repair. It's when cortisol reaches its absolute lowest point of the 24-hour cycle. It's when your parasympathetic nervous system achieves its greatest dominance over the sympathetic system. If you're not getting enough deep sleep, you're not getting enough time in the physiological state that allows your blood pressure to dip. And here's the mechanism that makes this so specifically relevant for people over 70. A cooler ambient temperature causes your body to activate brown adipose tissue. Brown fat, which is metabolically active tissue that burns calories to generate heat internally through a process called non-shivering thermogenesis. This is different from shivering. It's a controlled hormonal process mediated by norepinephrine acting on beta-3 adrenergic receptors in brown fat cells. While your body generates internal warmth, your peripheral vessels constrict slightly to conserve core heat. This peripheral constriction is fundamentally different from hypertensive constriction. It's controlled, temporary, and physiologically appropriate, and it actually improves the pressure differential between your core circulation and your extremities. Your heart works less to perfuse your vital organs. Your cardiac workload decreases. When you combine this with the prior foot soak, which has already dilated your peripheral vessels and initiated a drop in core temperature, you create a thermal gradient that is almost identical to what cardiologists see in textbook-perfect nocturnal dippers. The foot soak initiates the temperature drop. A cool room sustains it. The body interprets this sustained, gentle cooling as a signal to remain in deep parasympathetic sleep. The Japanese study I referenced earlier, conducted at Jichai Medical University and published in the Journal of Hypertension, followed over 1,300 elderly participants and found that those who slept in rooms below 67 degrees Fahrenheit had a 46% lower incidence of nighttime hypertensive events compared to those sleeping in warmer rooms. 46%. The lead researcher, Dr. Keigo Seki, stated, and this is the direct quote, "Ambient temperature control may be the closest thing to a blood pressure medication without a prescription for the elderly population." He went on to note that the effect was most pronounced in participants over the age of 75, precisely the population at greatest risk. 46% lower incidence. From adjusting your thermostat, that's not a supplement you need to order. It's not a device you need to buy. It's a dial on your wall. Now let me pull all of this together, because the power of this routine is not in any one step alone. It's in the sequence. It's in the compounding. Each step prepares your body for the next one, and the combined effect is substantially greater than the sum of the individual parts. 30 minutes before bed, you drink your beet juice and tart cherry juice mixture. 2 tablespoons of beet juice, 4 ounces of tart cherry juice mixed together. This begins the slow process of nitric oxide production through the interosmolar pathway and delivers exogenous melatonin and anti-inflammatory anthocyanins into your bloodstream. The clock starts. 25 minutes later, you begin your magnesium foot soak. A basin of warm water, 100 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt. Dissolved in the water, 5 to 8 minutes. Your peripheral vessels dilate. Magnesium absorbs through the skin of your feet and begins competing with calcium at the smooth muscle calcium channels in your arterial walls. Your skin temperature rises. Your core body temperature starts to fall. Melatonin production begins to increase in response to the cooling core. You dry your feet. You walk to your bedroom, which you've already set to 60 to 67 degrees. The cool air hits your warm, vasodilated skin and accelerates the thermal gradient. You lie on your back and put your legs up against the wall or headboard for 60 to 90 seconds. Venous blood returns to your heart. Peripheral edema begins to redistribute. Your heart rate begins to slow as stroke volume increases through the Frank-Starling mechanism. You bring your legs down, settle into your sleeping position and begin your slow nasal breathing. 4 seconds in through the nose. 1 second gentle hold. 6 seconds out through the nose. 11 cycles over roughly 2 minutes. Your vagus nerve fires on every extended exhale. Your parasympathetic nervous system takes over. Your baroreceptors begin to recalibrate downward. Cortisol secretion drops. Norepinephrine drops. By the time you're falling asleep, perhaps 7 or 8 minutes after you first lay down, your nitric oxide levels from the beet juice are approaching their peak. Your melatonin, both endogenous from the temperature drop and the darkness, and exogenous from the tart cherry juice, is binding to mTON and mTTWO receptors on your blood vessel walls, signaling them to dilate. Magnesium is softening the grip of calcium on your arteries. Anthocyanins are protecting your nitric oxide from oxidative destruction. Your sympathetic nervous system is quieting. Your vessels are open. Your heart is working less. Your kidneys are filtering more efficiently with improved blood flow. You are dipping. Your blood pressure is falling the way it was designed to fall during sleep, the way it did when you were 40, the way it did when your arteries were more elastic. Your melatonin was abundant. Your nitric oxide was plentiful, and your baroreceptors were sharp. The way it stopped doing, quietly, invisibly, dangerously, and nobody told you why or what you could do about it. I want to be absolutely clear about something. I am not telling you to stop taking your medication. If your doctor has prescribed you an antihypertensive drug, you take it. You take it exactly as prescribed. What I'm telling you is that this 5-minute routine addresses the root physiological mechanisms that drive nighttime blood pressure elevation in aging adults. mechanisms that medication alone often doesn't fully correct. It's not a replacement for medical care. It's a complement that targets the specific, age-related vulnerabilities of the cardiovascular system. And if you're working with your doctor, share this routine with them. Show them this information. Let them monitor your progress with you. And here's what I've seen happen, and what the research supports when these interventions are combined. Within the first 3 to 5 days, most people notice they're sleeping more deeply. They wake up fewer times during the night. Their sleep feels more restorative. They describe it as sleeping the way they used to years ago. Their morning blood pressure readings, taken with a home cuff within 30 minutes of waking, before coffee, before standing for extended periods, begin to trend downward. Within 3 to 4 weeks of consistent nightly practice, many people see a reduction of 5 to 12 systolic points on their morning reading. Some see even more. The variability depends on starting blood pressure, current medication use, dietary sodium intake, kidney function, body weight, and other individual factors. But the direction is consistent, down, and it stays down for as long as the routine stays consistent. 5 steps, 5 minutes, every night. Let me repeat them one final time because I want you to remember this. When you turn off this video, I want you to be able to do this tonight. 1. Beet juice and tart cherry juice, consumed 30 minutes before bed. 2 tablespoons of raw beet juice. 4 ounces of 100% tart cherry juice, no added sugar. Mix and drink. 2. Magnesium foot soak. A basin of warm water, 100 to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt dissolved in the water. Soak your feet for 5 to 8 minutes. 3. Legs up the wall. Lie on your back, legs elevated against the wall or headboard. 60 to 90 seconds. Let gravity return the blood and fluid to your central circulation. 4. Slow nasal breathing with extended exhale. Breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold gently for 1 second. Breathe out through your nose for 6 seconds. 11 cycles, approximately 2 minutes. 5. Cool bedroom. Set the temperature to 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit every single night, no exceptions. Your blood pressure doesn't just exist at 2 in the afternoon in a brightly lit doctor's office with a nurse making conversation while the cuff inflates. It lives with you at midnight, at 2 a.m., at 4 a.m. It's working while you sleep, or it's working against you while you sleep. And the difference between those two scenarios, for someone over 70, is not trivial. It's not academic. It's the difference between a stroke at 3 in the morning and another decade of life. Between a cardiac event in the silence and the dark, and waking up in the morning feeling like your body actually rested, actually healed, actually did what it was supposed to do overnight. You have more control over this than anyone has ever told you. The mechanisms are real. The research is published. The routine is 5 minutes long. And everything you need is already in your kitchen, your bathroom, and your thermostat. Start tonight.